I will always choose a love story. And I think when I think about Unbroken, at the end of the day, it's a love story. It is a love story between Alexander and Lena. And Alexander is truly the unsung hero of the film.
Life finds a way.
Life's not fair, is it?
Life moves pretty fast.
Life is a banquet.
Busy living.
What we do in life?
Way of life.
Life is pain.
Choose life.
Live life and proud.
To live would be an awfully big adventure.
Welcome to the movie of your life with Richard Roeper. You know, we're all the stars of our own story, but depending on the day, we might be the hero, the sidekick, the comic relief, the mentor, or maybe even the villain. On this podcast, we talk with actors, directors, musicians, athletes, artists, and newsmakers about their origin stories, about their work, and about the movies that shaped their dreams, influenced their worldviews, and helped define who they are today. Our guest today is filmmaker Beth Lane. She's the director of a great documentary called UnBroken. It's available right now on Netflix.
7 Jewish children who came over here together.
But one fragment at a time.
That's Mama.
They give me something to hold on to.
This extraordinary film chronicles the true story of 7 siblings who managed to survive the Holocaust against unimaginable odds, only to be separated upon their arrival in America. Today, we're going to talk to Beth about tracing her family's footsteps across war-torn Europe, uncovering their shared trauma and survival, and exploring the unexpected challenges they faced when they were finally reunited later in life. Beth, how are you?
I am great this morning. Thank you for having me, Rich.
It's so great to talk to you again. We recently had an event at the Wayfarer Theater in Highland Park, Illinois, and a beautiful crowd, and your sister, who's an executive producer on the film, and of course, your mother, Ginger, who, as I told you and have told her, is a movie star and was wonderful. But that was it was such a great experience. And I'm sure for you, having spent so much time on this film, to see a crowd of 200 plus, they could have sold another 200 tickets to this event. It had to be great to see the audience reaction to your work.
I have to say, I continue to be blown away by how many audiences really are showing up to the cinema to actually watch a movie together. We've been on Netflix for over a year. We've been on Apple, Amazon, Fandango, Google, YouTube, and people are still coming to the theater. And when the Illinois Holocaust Museum told me that we were sold out, I was like, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. So it's really very heartwarming, and it makes it just, I feel like the movie in many ways is one of my children. And so it gives me a lot of nachas. It gives me a lot of pride.
That's
In the
awesome.
child, in the movie itself, you know.
Yeah, of course. Let's go back to the very beginning for those who don't know about the film. If you could just explain what the movie's all about.
Absolutely. I mean, Unbroken is about 7 Jewish siblings who were hidden for 2 years outside of Berlin during World War II. They are the only family of 7 known to have survived the Holocaust together and then emigrated to this country, to America, together. So their photograph hangs in the last gallery of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And when we made that discovery in the 90s, it was kind of jaw-dropping. But it took a very long time for me to actually walk into the story, feel like it was my story to tell, and everything kind of changed regarding that photograph and the story in 2017. So that's, in a nutshell, what the film is about. It's about my journey to walk into the story and bring it to all of you guys.
And it is an incredible story, and you use various techniques, including some graphics and animation, obviously photos, archival footage, and your own personal journey and experiences talking to people. It is so extraordinary. And the 7 children, their mother gets involved in activism and risking her life, and they eventually lose her. You talk about that. And then their father, who actually converted, correct?
Yes.
To Judaism, but then he's not in the picture. Can you talk a little bit about how the 7 siblings were, where they were hiding out, how they were able to avoid the unfortunate tragedy that befell so many millions of people during the Holocaust?
Absolutely. I mean, my birth grandfather, Alexander, was a Catholic man from Paderborn, Germany, who was traveling down to Hungary selling umbrellas and walking sticks and parasols. That's what you did back at the turn of the century. And he fell in love with my birth grandmother, Lena. in 1925, and Lena was the daughter of a chazan, of a cantor, a very Orthodox Jewish community in Hungary. So in order to marry her, he was told, well, if you convert, you can marry. And that's what he did. So he converted and subscribed to all of the rituals that were required to become a Jewish man. They had their first child in 25, and in 33, Alexander was actually arrested and deported to the very first concentration camp in Germany, really only, I think, about 3 months after Hitler came to power and became the chancellor. So he was incarcerated in Oranienburg, and those are the beginning seeds of really seeing what an unbelievable courageous and brave woman Lena was, because she was responsible for actually getting her husband out of concentration camp and out of prison. And that's just unprecedented for a woman to have that kind of moxie. And she had to give up her business in order to do that. They all had to give up a lot of things. Alexander was no longer allowed to work. But we'll fast forward really to, when in 1943, Lena was deported and taken to several labor camps, but ultimately perished at Auschwitz. But the children also were incarcerated in the Jewish hospital in Berlin. And they were there under lock and key until this benevolent farmer, who happened to store his fruits and vegetable crates in the basement of the building where mom and her siblings and parents were living, but he was able to secure their release out of the hospital. And he put them on the back of his truck, and he drove them 60 kilometers east of Berlin to his farmland. And that's where they hid for 2 years.
And as the film outlines, Beth, it was kind of an open secret in the town. In fact, even the mayor, and the mayor's a Nazi because you're not going to be in power unless you're part of the party, right? But that mayor, in his own way too, at the very least, looked the other way or allowed it to continue.
He did more than look the other way. He brought them extra ration cards. He provided them with some foodstuffs as best he could, but he was remarkable. And we actually applied to Yad Vashem for Righteous Among the Nations and the Gardens of the Righteous for Paul and Arthur Schmidt, who have been deemed the honor, but we also applied for Rudy Fairman because we felt that he was that critical in their survival. He has not been honored at Yad Vashem. They have very, very strict rules. Because he was a Nazi, he can't be honored. But as you said, you could not be in a position in government. You could not be the mayor of a town unless you were part of the National Socialist Party.
And I want to talk to you, Beth, about your decision as a documentarian. As everybody knows these days, you have documentaries where the documentarian is behind the scenes, maybe narrates. Then we have, on the very opposite end of the spectrum, the Michael Moores of the world, who has done some brilliant work, but it's almost performance art. Right. And this is somewhere in between. But I want to ask you about your decision to say, I'm going to make myself part of this story. I'm sure that was something you wrestled with.
It is. It was very difficult. I did not have any intention of putting myself in the movie. I didn't want to be in the movie. As an actor, I was very concerned that I would be performative on some level, I suppose, even though I've acted in many films. I know how to turn that switch on and off. But still, because it was my family story, it was concern about having some kind of a vanity project or those kinds of things. And I was enrolled at UCLA to get my Master of Fine Arts in theater. In acting when I decided to make the movie. This was in the summer of 2017. And when I began to make the film, I was enrolled in a class, documentary film and production, that was a 30-week class. And 10 weeks, between weeks 20 and 30 or whatever it was, I had a professor who said, you have to be in the movie. You must. And I was like, no. And she just absolutely insisted. And she gave all these good reasons. I wish I could remember what the reasons were now. I can't. But I'm really indebted to her for insisting that I put myself in. And honestly, it made directing the film so much easier to do it. In the edit room, we were really able to tailor my role as the narrator, as a character, as the daughter, as the sister, as the granddaughter, all those things, and as the director, so that you wouldn't get too much of Beth. That was really something that, even though I was walking into the story and you're on my journey, it's still not my story. It's my mother's and her siblings and their extraordinary survival. So I'm really proud of my editor, Aaron Soffin, who helped me tailor the balance of Beth and how much of her should be in there. And he would also really push me. I had some pretty dark nights of the soul with some of my narration. Just like, oh my gosh, this is the final thing I'm going to say about this, and it's going to be living on, in cinematic infamy forever. Like, I don't know what to say. And so that was a challenge. It was really hard, but at the end of the day, I think we delivered.
Film is called Unbroken. It's available right now. You can go to Netflix. It's an extraordinary documentary. Okay, Beth, the seven siblings, the war's over. They come to New York and then are all sent to Chicago. And I think there were even some newspaper stories about that because it was amazing, these seven children. Your mother is the youngest of the siblings. And people got to remember, this is a very different time. Things would have been handled differently now. But in the mid to late 40s and through the 50s, the children come to Chicago and then they're separated. They're all sent in different directions and basically told, forget about the past. It's too traumatic. It's too much. You have to live this new life now. Can you talk a little bit about that and the experiences in particular that your mother had after she came to America? Because it's a whole new set of challenges that most of us can't even imagine going through.
Yes, and I think there are so many. I was talking with my friend Susie Snyder, who was the curator in DC. She was at the screening at the Wayfair the other night because she's moved to Chicago. And we were really talking about how so few World War II films talk about what happens after. Because there is so much that happens to Holocaust survivors and survivors of any genocide or any war happens to not only them, but their extended family and then beyond. And I think for many people, once we get to that scene in the film when they are separated, if people haven't shed a tear by then, they probably do in that moment, or they're just so like aghast at how could, after all they've gone through, how could what is supposed to be a logical medical organization who's trying to protect children separate them from each other when that's all they have in a country where they don't speak the language, they don't know the rules, it's all and even the fact that they're dressed so beautifully on the cover of every single newspaper in the country. These are new clothes that don't really even belong to them yet, right? They've been given wonderful clothes from UNRWA or from the Joint Distribution. Thank goodness that they were giving them fresh clothing that wasn't lice-ridden and so forth. But I think for them, it was just what was done. I think my Aunt Gertrude says in the film, we didn't cry, we didn't know what to do, we just did what we were told. And when you are accustomed to hiding to save your life, you do what you think is going to be the most protective thing. That being said, they were all placed in foster care. My mother was placed in a foster care that was physically abusive to her. And she was visiting with my Aunt Ruth one day, who found out that she was getting beaten in her foster home. And she went and told the Chicago Children's Bureau, my sister's getting beaten. She's 6 years old. This is, what are we going to do about this? So immediately they got her out. I think Mom stayed with Aunt Renee and her foster family for a short while until my grandparents had put in an application to adopt a child. And the Jewish Children's Bureau approached my grandparents and said, well, we don't have an infant for you, but would you consider a 6-year-old? She looks like a 3-year-old. And she could really use a loving home and family. And that's what happened. And my grandparents, I think, gave her every possible opportunity that one could ever ask for, between private school and dance lessons and music lessons, shelter, food, clothing, of course, medical care. But it was really all the love that she had been missing so much from a nuclear family. And it was hard for my mom. It was hard for her to adjust to having so much attention put on her. And when she would visit with her siblings, she would come back to my grandparents' home and she would really act out. She wouldn't behave. And my grandparents didn't know what to do. So they spoke to the Jewish Children's Bureau and said, we need some guidance here. We need some support. And it was their recommendation to my grandparents that they should sever ties. And
And they do for 40 years before being reunited.
they do. They do. I will share with you that it's too complicated to go into in the movie, so we didn't put it in, but there were touch points over those 40 years where there was some very, very, very intermittent contact. And some of the stories are hilarious. If I ever write a book or create a museum exhibit, I can include some of those. For example, my mom was at the doctor's office one day, and these two nice ladies came over and tapped her on the shoulder and said, can we talk to you in the hallway? And she's like, sure, it's the 60s. So no one thought twice about it. And they went in the hall and they said, are you Ginger Lane? Yes, I am. Or Spiegel at the time. We're your sisters. Like they recognized her sitting across from her in a waiting room, and they couldn't let the moment pass. But that was all. They were very respectful. My mom's siblings were very respectful of my grandparents' decision to help my mom live a new life and really do the best she could to find her way in this country as a refugee, and to be able to say, I'm an American citizen, I belong to this family, I live in this home, and to move forward.
Again, the documentary is called Unbroken. We're going to take a quick break. And as Beth mentioned, in addition to being a filmmaker, she's an actor. We're going to talk to her about some of the movies that have made an impression on her.
The Movie of Your Life podcast with Richard Roeper is brought to you by Wayfair Theaters. Wayfair Theaters has 2 locations, one in Highland Park, Illinois, and one in Payson, Utah. For all showtimes, go to wayfairtheaters.com. Not only do they show your blockbusters just around the block, but live events and even live comedy. Remember, wayfairtheaters.com, click on events to find all those special and unique opportunities near you.
Welcome back to the Movie of Your Life with Richard Roeper. Our guest today is filmmaker Beth Lane. The documentary is called Unbroken. Beth, you touched on the fact that you're an actor, and I know it goes all the way back to Chicago connections, right?
Yes.
Is it the Pivens, people like that you worked with or
Absolutely.
associated
I
with?
mean, I remember my very first role in a play was out in Wilmette. We were living in Wilmette. And it's like the children's theater or something like that. But my first real training was definitely with Joyce and Byrne Piven. And I was a member of the Piven, what did we call it? I took classes and those were so much fun. But then there was a youth theater workshop. Like we were the first, it was called the Young People's Company. And boy, was that a storied class of actors. Joan Cusack, Ann Cusack, Shira Piven, Daryl Hall. There were a couple others, Lisa Godfrey, and I were in this young people's company, and boy, did we have fun. And then it was really Joyce who was responsible for helping me get my very first movie gig. She brought all of us down to meet Tony Bill, and we were all cast in My Bodyguard. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in such a long time.
Man, that's Adam Baldwin and Matt Dillon, right?
Yes. And Adam
Yeah.
Baldwin was a classmate of mine at New Trier. And it was funny because we came to the film in such different ways. I don't think we had any scene. We might have had a scene or two together, like in one of the classrooms or something. I mean, I was a glorified extra. I didn't have a role, unlike Joan Cusack, who had a fabulous role in that film. But we had so much fun showing up on set every day for several weeks. And that was one of those, you have so much chutzpah. Tony Bill one day on set, he said, can anybody here tap dance? I'm like, I can tap dance. And I was a real hoofer back then. And so he put me into this scene where there's like this big chase scene, and there are these 2 people on stage tap dancing, and I'm one of them. And so that was the very first time I ever got to go to a movie premiere, was for My Bodyguard. And we were somewhere down near what is now Navy Pier. And there were hundreds of people at this premiere.
Oh, I
And
wonder
of
if that
course,
was McClure Court Theater. maybe.
yeah, something like that. Something like that. And I remember going with my pals from high school Carla Hassett, Ben Rigglein, who's a fabulous composer, singer, songwriter, and Rusty Schwimmer, who's a fabulous Chicago actress, Hollywood actress. And when they saw me on the thing tap dancing, of course they all screamed, and like we were just so much fun in high school.
Great. What's the first film you remember making a big impression on you, either seeing it on television or going to the movies when you were a kid?
I mean, the first impression, this is not a good one. So I'll give you one good impression and one bad impression. How
Okay.
about that? The first one, I think it must have been 1968, 1969. I was 5 or 6 years old and I was taking swimming lessons at Hull House, Jane Addams Center,
Mhm.
Broadway near Roscoe. That's where we lived. And my brother wanted to stay and watch the movie afterwards. I was like, okay, sure, do what my big brother says. And it was Frankenstein. And I was 5.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
I was 5 years old and I had night terrors for I don't even know how long. And I remember my dad holding my hand, walking me over to Hull House, going up to the person in charge saying, "Why are you showing Frankenstein to 5-year-olds?" I was so scared. And to this day, I cannot watch horror movies. Like
Really?
I can't. The only horror movie I have seen since that day was what was the name of Francis Ford Coppola's horror movie? I think it begins with a T. Was it Teatro? Was that his horror movie? Oh
Oh
gosh.
God, I forgot about
I
that.
should
Yeah.
have prepared. I should have prepared for this.
Mm.
But anyway, I can't watch horror movies. I should be in one to rip the Band-Aid off of what it's like to be on a horror movie set. Then maybe I could watch a horror movie. But the good movie that had a wonderful impression on me, in addition to like The Sound of Music and The Wizard of Oz, which I think
Mm.
every child, if you don't fall in love with those, I don't know what to say. But was Love Story.
Jenny, I'm sorry.
Don't. Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Love Story came out in 1970, so I would have
Yep.
been 7. And my Aunt Petra, my mom's sister, was 1920, and she wanted to go see it. And I was sleeping over at grandma's that weekend. And so Petra was still living at home. And my grandmother was probably late 50s and didn't think anything of it. Oh, let's go to the movies. Let's go to see Love Story. And although a little young for me, for a 7-year-old, I think absolutely I will always choose a love story. And
Mm.
I think when I think about Unbroken, at the end of the day, it's a love story. It is a love story between Alexander and Lena. And Alexander is truly the unsung hero of the film. He was a broken man after he had been incarcerated at Oranienburg. He refused to give up his Jewish identity in order to save his family, even though he did eventually do other things that, spoiler alert, don't want to talk about.
Mm.
Uh, but it's a love story, and I think that when I think about that film, Ryan O'Neal, Ally
Mhm.
McGraw, it's always kind of had a little spot. It's not my desert island movie, but it's definitely the movie that had the most impression on me, I think.
Uh, the late great Roger Ebert coined the phrase "Ally McGraw's disease," which is when the actor gets better looking, the sicker they get. Ally McGraw's disease, because she did die beautifully. But it is, and it's a film that's kind of polarized. It was a huge bestseller, very pulpy, and then it was very corny and had the love, the theme, which was very famous and was played on the radio. But people still talk about it all these years later. What about? Do you have like we call kind of a guilty pleasure, Beth, or a film that you love that friends and colleagues think you're nuts for loving
Oh,
it?
sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, my kids won't watch it with me. I don't think they've ever watched the whole thing with me. But Harold and Maude is my guilty pleasure.
Mm.
I love you. I love you.
Oh, Harold. That's wonderful. Go and love some more.
Harold and Maude is absolutely my favorite movie on the planet. And I I wish I could articulate why. I think I didn't realize until many, many years later that Ruth Gordon's character is a Holocaust survivor. Like that never even entered my consciousness when I fell in love with that movie.
And Bud Cort, is it Bud Cort who's in that?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's one of those films that everybody was showing in film class for a long time. Kind of the quintessential quirky indie thing. So I know it's had a lot of influence on filmmakers. As a director, an actor, filmmaker, if you had the opportunity, Beth, to spend a day on the set of any movie throughout history, what film would it be?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Any film in history. I'm gonna say I wanna get on that ride with Roma. I wanna go on that water.
¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Estás bien, mi amor? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Estás bien? Cleo nos salvó. Gracias. Gracias.
I how do you do that? Like, how do you set the stage for that? That just blew me away. That really blew me away. Yeah, I'll stick with Roma. Yeah.
That's a great choice. Yeah. And the final question kind of goes back to, like you said, your desert island movie. I like to ask people if God forbid this happened, but movies were to exist no more, or you had time to just watch one movie one last time, what would the film be?
Dr. Zhivago.
You ever come to Moscow?
From Grado.
If only there was someone to look after you. But of course, if there were, I'd be destroyed by jealousy.
Zhivago, don't. My dear, don't, please.
Dr. Zhivago. Again, I'm just a hopeless romantic, and it has everything in it. It just has everything in it. That's
Beautiful film. Great answers. Beth Lane, the film again is called UnBroken. Thank you so much for joining us on the movie of your life.
Thank you, Richard.
Don't forget to subscribe and share The Movie of Your Life with Richard Roeper, brought to you by Wayfair Theaters.